the very first thing that you should be doing before you think about finding deals, and that's picking the area. What areas should you be investing in? It's kind of like fishing. If you fish in a pond that has no fish, you're not going to do very well. But if you fish in a pond that has a ton of fish, your odds are going to go up. And that's what we want to be talking about today. And a lot of people don't take the time to make it happen. It's the old adage of sharpening the saw. Two wood axemen, choppers, what are they called? Wood guys went out and they were going to be clearing some timber. And they were both supposed to clear the same amount. Let's call it 20 trees. So the first guy just went out and just started hacking at the trees. The next guy sharpened his saw, which took a little bit of time, but once he did, he was able to cut down the trees so much faster that he got it done faster than the guy that didn't take the time to sharpen his saw. That's what we're gonna be talking about today and getting into quite a bit of detail here. So when I first started in real estate, okay, one of the things that I did is I went out there and tried to find deals. I spent months to go find a good deal. Then what would happen is I would get that deal under contract and I would call all excited up to a hard money lender and say, I found a deal. Well, they weren't as excited as I was because they'd take a look at it and for some reason or another, they wouldn't be interested. They'd say, I don't like that area, or I heard there was a shooting in that county, or I've heard bad things there, or whatever, I'm out of money, whatever the case is, it just didn't work. And this happened a few times. And finally I wised up and I said, okay, we got to change this. So after a few of these unpleasant, horrible, discouraging experiences, I said, I got a little bit smart, okay? And what I basically said is, what do you want to lend on? What will work for you as a hard money lender? What will work for you? And then I'll go find it. I basically said, hey, give me your shopping list. What do you like and what do you don't like? I wrote all that down and then I made sure I went out and targeted properties that met for the criteria that they wanted, because if you don't have the money to back you, you got nothing, okay? So I asked them, what do you want to lend on? What areas do you want to be in? What do you like or what do you dislike? Those are the types of things. Then I went and found these properties that was exactly what they were looking for. Because here's the thing you've got to realize, good hard money lenders are hard to find. And I emphasize good hard money lenders are hard to find. There's lots of them out there, especially if they will lend the full purchase and some of the rehab. That's even amazing and that's even harder to find. So when you do, it's easier for you to find a new area than it is to find a new hard money lender that will lend you the purchase and some or all of the rehab. So that's the first thing, is understand who's going to fund these deals for you and ask them what they're looking for, what they like and what they don't like. For those of you that are members with us, we have the advanced deal analysis software that does all this for you so you can understand that, so you don't even have to make a phone call. Now let's get into some property specifics, some things you need to know about the properties. FHA limit. It's got to be under $500,000 or the FHA limit, whichever is lower. I want to say that one more time. You don't want to go over the FHA limit or $500,000. You want to take the lesser of those two when you're out there looking for properties. And again, that is what the property is going to resell for, not what you're going to buy it for. So this is after you fix the property up. You want to make sure that you're not exceeding the FHA limit or $500,000. FHA loans are the easiest to get. That's why a lot of people go and get FHA loans. They require the least amount of down payment. They're the best for people that have some credit challenges, which is why we want to stay under that FHA threshold. You want to make sure that the area you are going to invest in meets these guidelines. If they do not, you're going to have an uphill battle of selling the property. You're going to have an uphill battle of getting a good deal on the property, and you're going to have an uphill battle of finding a great lender. So how do you know what the FHA loan max is going to be in that specific county? Well, all you've got to do is just Google it. FHA, we've got a typo there, FHA loan max in Cook County, Illinois. Well, if I do that, I did that search and it came up and it said Cook County, a one family is $379,500. So I want to make sure any property, once I fix it up, is going to be less than $380,000. Now the three family is at $587, but that's for a threeplex, right? I want to look at the one family is what I'm looking at. Now, if I'm in Crawford, it's $356,000. So those are the things I've got to keep in mind, which means my resale price can't be over that $356,000. So I need to be buying something for less than that, putting the money into it and listing it for $356,000 is what I'm trying to do. This is an example. All you got to do is just Google it. You'll find it. It's pretty easy. So I'd be targeting properties to resell less than $380,000. Now let's throw a quick pro tip here. Remember, this is the resale. That's what I just talked about. So you've got to be around 265,000 depending upon repairs, and you'd want to make sure that you're not buying something that you're going to have to list for more than that FHA. One of the things to really watch out for is be careful for rural properties. It's not enough to know your hard money lender will lend in the state or county. Be careful for rural areas. So how can you know if something's a rural area? Well, one dead giveaway, if you're on State Road 121 or State Road 163 or whatever the case is, that's a big one. If the mail doesn't get delivered there and you've got to send it to a PO box, if the population is small for the town, if it's got dirt or gravel roads, those are types of things that indicate to us that it's going to be a rural property. Now, why is it so difficult if a property is rural? Well, it's a small economy. There's very few buyers and sellers. There's not much of a market. Services are hard to come by. It's hard to find contractors. It's hard to find good real estate agents. It's hard to find good property managers. So invest where there's the most amount of opportunity is really what we're trying to get after here. We find out that that's where most cash sales are happening. Then we look to invest in those zip codes. So I want to repeat myself here. I can go back and look at historical records and see how many cash sales have actually occurred within specific zip codes. And when I look at that, then I can say where were the most cash transactions actually happening by zip code. Then those are the ones that I actually want to go after. And you can do that with Investor's Edge. You put in the county, you have to type in the full county name, and then you put in the state, and then you put your comma space name, and then what you actually want to search for, okay? So this is what we're getting into of what to be looking for. So owner occupied, we want non-owner occupied. The investor purchase, we want that to be investor purchase properties. Mortgage information, we want to have his cash buyers is what we want to include. Ownership information, we want the last sell date for the last year, or the last 6 months, or whatever we want to do there. I recommend a year. Property characteristics, we want single family houses, condos. I typically don't do multis 2 to 4 because I prefer single families over multis, but you could do that if you would like to. Estimated value, check your FHA loan limits. I want to make sure I'm not looking at stuff that's going to be over the FHA loan limits, like the 380, so we don't exceed that. And on the low, I want to make sure it's at least worth $50,000 or $75,000. As far as the marketing, let's talk about this. My properties, my marketing, you click on the list and you do a checkbox. So when you click on those, you can actually do that and you export that list. When you export that list, what you're going to do is save it to Google, and then on Google Drive, which is absolutely for free. If you don't have a Google account, you need to get one. You drop it in a folder and then you go through and you convert to uploads. When you open that Google Drive, you create a pivot table. Now stick with me. I know this may sound hard, but it's actually pretty easy. You go Control A, select all, you select the data, you select pivot table, you create a new sheet, you add the row by zip codes, and then you add the values by zip codes, and you change the order from descending from the zip code. That's how easy it is you take the information out of Investor's Edge, you pop it into Google Drive, you create this pivot table by following these simple steps, and then you actually have a list from the most cash buyers by zip code to the least cash buyers by zip code, which basically tells us there's a lot of investors there because we're going to assume cash buyers are typically investors. That's what we're going to assume. Now, that's not always going to be correct, but it's going to point us in a good direction. Then what we've got to do is build our list. Then we can determine the county we want to be investing in. Select the state, select the county, and then we look at how much equity. So these are the other things that we can look at as we are trying to build out our list. When's the last sell date? We'll make sure it's at least 6 months ago. And then purchase list, purchase partial list, don't buy, you do the partial and you select them and select the zip code. So these are the records, you export it, put it to email, we talked about that, and you download it for those specific zip codes. And so those are the things that we really need to be talking about here as we're saying, where should I be investing? And a lot of people overlook these things. So the first step that I would say is we've got to find out where the most activity is. And we do that by determining cash buyers. Once we understand the activity, we want to make sure that we're under that FHA limit so that we can make sure we're not going to exceed that, because that's where we're going to have most of the deals actually happening in and where most of our buyers are actually going to be coming from. Then we can look at making sure we're not in rural areas. We can make sure we are where our hard money lenders will actually lend us money, which is the first step that we talked about in today. So if you've enjoyed this, if you want to get a copy of our property value analysis, text your email address to 435-294-0433.